All right, hello. Welcome to today's episode of the Castalog. As always, this is me, Mostrino. This is my voice.
It's kovak.
And I'm Katz.
And I am sick. Lizard.
Yep. And this is our little group for today. So, starting off, as always, Monster Cat releases of the past week. Starting with Monday's release, the new Protostar track, Without You, featuring Megan. I want to say Lenius, I'm not sure how the last name is pronounced. But as far as the vocals go, I thought they were pretty solid. But the drop really fell flat for me. It had some energy going, but then the drop just kind of killed it for me. And it's all right, but really not too enjoyable in my opinion.
Yeah, I can appreciate Protostar kind of going into sort of more unique territory because it's better than sort of just doing the same drum and bass song over and over, like with his past few releases. But this one just kind of is really forgettable. I think it would be more interesting if the melody in the drop wasn't the exact same as the one in the build and intro and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just I don't know. I respect it for being different, but it's not very interesting.
I was very disappointed by this. I really dislike this. I think it's the first Protostar track that I actively dislike.
Not mine.
But yeah, I don't know. I remember Protostar saying something like, my next release is gonna blow you guys away, and it certainly did. But it definitely was not in a positive sense. Like, almost everything about this track just kind of falls incredibly flat to me. Like, even if Galaxies and Where I Belong weren't amazing, like they're kind of standard, at least they have something to hold on to and have something like that makes them like decent tracks at least.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, you have the melody, which is okay. I'd say this is one of Protostar's weakest, but it's okay. It does its job. And the vocals are pretty great, but just the drops are so empty. They have no impact. And probably my biggest gripe with the track is in the second half when it kind of like switches tempo. The long, really, really long build-up with like the vocals.
Mm-hmm.
I usually like how Protostar uses the vocals like to build up the drop, but in that case it kind of didn't work and it felt really awkward. And the melody in the last drop just doesn't work. It just does not work. He could have maybe switched it up a bit. I don't know, but it just doesn't work. And it's like Kovak, I respect the attempt to switch up switch it up a bit, but no. It didn't work for me at all.
I think I recall Protostar being faced with criticism because people thought that Galaxies was generic or something to that effect, like it wasn't what he was usually known for, and so people gave him a lot of criticism. And I believe what he said was that if you didn't like Galaxies, then this next track is going to blow you away because it's different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's different. Not in a great way, though. I mean, you know me, I've always been a fan of Protostar's more melodic stuff, at least a lot more than his neuro. But this is, I don't know, it's just bizarre. It's drum and bass with almost no drums, or at least almost no kicks.
At least there's bass.
I guess there's bass. But, I mean, you wouldn't know it because you're focused on just how weird of a drop it is. It feels very, very out of place. Not good. And, add it to another one. Add it to the long list of Protostar tracks that I dislike.
So at first I was like, it's really boring. And I was like, I love the instrumental way better than the vocals. And I listened to it twice in the past 3 days, and I'm like, why did I ever say I liked the instrumental? It's terrible. I like the vocal version better. But like I definitely like will say that like the drop feels very different to like drum. Like it doesn't feel like it has a build up to it. Like it doesn't feel like it drops, but it's there. But overall, it's okay. It's not his best, but not his worst.
All right. Moving on to Tuesday's release, Direct's EP. We're just going to go through this track by track. The first one, Your Touch, I thought it was quite nice. Not necessarily anything amazing, but I thought it was cool. I really like the bass in there. I love it when he does that. And yeah, pretty solid track.
Yeah,
I think
this one's probably one of my weakest or one of my least favorite cuts off of the EP. There's not really much for me to say about this one. I think the drums are cool because they're probably the closest Monster Cat's going to ever get to having something like Burial on the label, which the drums on this are really good, but they're like there's nothing really much other than that than like the vocal chops that are commonplace in a lot of his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In general, I think this is like a big return to form for Direct. I love this EP. It's super nice. It feels like it's on the same tier as Trust in Me, which is saying quite a lot actually.
Yeah.
Especially after Nobody Like You and Labyrinth, which were both good but nothing amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Your Touch is in general just a super nice track. Like Kovak said, this is like one of the closest things we'll ever get to Burial on the label. And the bass is super clean. I love it. And even though it's not the most like memorable, it's still a super nice listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about this. It's my least favorite that was released on the day it was.
Mm-hmm.
What day was that? That was
Tuesday.
Tuesday. I've already lost track. Time has no meaning.
Yeah.
I
Welcome to
I heard
20th.
I heard the intro. I really love the intro. Because it sounded to me almost like he was going to go into like some Entropy style house.
That would be cool.
But then that didn't happen, and it was just kind of basic Future Garage, kind of in a similar vein to something like So Sure, which I like. But it feels like half-hearted in comparison.
In contrast to like what all of you guys are saying, this is like my second favorite off the EP after Opal. So it's my favorite of the EP day of tracks that weren't pre-released. My one thing against it is it doesn't like it's the first track on the EP, but I feel like it doesn't really fit the bill as a first track. And like just jumping into Opal a little bit, like Opal has like the intro feels like it's the first track off an EP, and I think they just kind of conflict with one another. How they both feel like they'd be a first track. But I guess there's really no way around it if he produced it and he was like, I want it on this EP. So, but overall, like it's really good direct. And like this EP overall is, I prefer Cold Ground, but this EP is way better in like production. But in terms of songs that I like, Cold Ground is better for me.
All right. Moving on to the second track, I know Jace kind of teased this one a little bit, Opal, which I find it to be quite similar to Your Touch, except, different vocal chops, but my thoughts on it are pretty much the same. It's a very nice track. I don't think it's one of his strongest, but he's generally very, very solid, and I think this is just another one of those.
Yeah, I like this one a lot more than Your Touch, mainly because the vocal chops in it have this really nice progression to them and really switch themselves up a lot. And also that sort of like bleep bloopy kind of like 2-note little effect that appears in the second drop is really, really cool.
Opal is excellent. Definitely up there on my favorite tracks of the year. It's just direct doing direct things. Like super clean, fantastic progression. It has a lot of memorability in contrast to like some part of the EP. And the track itself is like super super catchy, and it's very easy to come back to. And yeah, absolutely great.
It's okay. Kind of boring, honestly. Yeah, not one that I usually would go back to, but if it comes on, I'm not gonna skip it.
I liked like when this first came out, I really liked the song because it reminded me a lot of Overthinking Rain by Pierce Fulton, and I actually made a mashup between them. But it just reminded me of it, but more as like an instrumental version of it.
All right. Moving on to the third track on the other pre-release, Further with Cloud None. And I know when this came out, I said it was very disappointing, my least favorite collaboration between the two. And I still think it might be my least favorite. I know Without You wasn't too strong either, but it's growing on me a little bit. I can't really definitively say if I like it or don't care for it right now, but it's starting to grow on me. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I don't think this has really grown on me all that much. There's certain choices like the sort of high end in the bass in the first half, as well as the very dissonant melody in the second half that just don't work in its favor and really give off a very it's very off-putting to me, which is something that I never really want direct style to be. Like it just doesn't mesh well.
It's direct, it's Club None. Of course, they're gonna make something excellent together, and I really like this. And contrary to some of the opinions, I think the dissonance in the second drop works well. It's not. It kind of drops the track down a bit because it's not mastered or excellently executed or something. But yeah, it's just a super nice listen in general. I really like how the vocals were implemented and feel like part of the ambience. And that I like how they kind of switched it up for the second half, because the first drop was good, but it was nothing like mind blowing or impressive. It was just nice, a nice listen. But the second drop was such a nice touch, and it was such a like unique moment in both of these guys' discographies that it kind of stands out to me above the rest.
Yeah, while this is definitely not my least favorite collaboration between these two, because well, Lost and Found still exists. This is the only actual dislike on the EP. The first drop, it kind of reminded me of Free My World, which I thought if you're direct and you're gonna like reach back in your repertoire like a long way, why would you choose Free My World to try and revamp? But in any case, that's not great, and I kind of feel the same way about Kovak, about the second drop. It's just, yeah, it's very dissonant, it's off-putting, and also Matt Van is a thing.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
I guess I'll jump in. Overall, like, it's kind of just another collab between them. It's nothing phenomenal. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's nothing phenomenal. But for me, like, overall, like, just talking about the EP in general, overall, like, it's my third favorite track. Third.
Okay. Then
Gotta love my talking. So good.
Moving into the fourth track on the EP, How Can It Be? I thought this one was probably the most forgettable or least memorable one on there. It's not necessarily bad, but it just doesn't have as much charm as the other ones do for me. So yeah, it's the most forgettable for me, but aside from that, there's not really anything wrong with it per se.
Yeah, I agree a lot with Mostrino on this. It's just not a very memorable song. Like, the only thing that I can really point to as being interesting is the main sort of bell chimey melody, which is cool. But yeah, it's forgettable.
In contrast, I hate that bell chime sound. I don't know why, I just despise it, which makes me hate this track so much. Like, it's definitely a great produced track. That one thing just ruins the song for me.
I disagree. I really love it. I love this whole track. I think Slyleaf really gives it a lot of charm. And it doesn't get annoying to me like some other tracks, like Further. I think it's well executed. It progresses very well, and despite being so short, I'm definitely willing to come back to this.
Yeah, well, I agreed with like most of the points here. It's well executed. It's really nice. I enjoy the bell chimes a lot, but I think it's kind of lacking something to keep me hooked throughout the entire track. It kind of lacks some impact that would make me come back to the track. Like, the bell chimes are nice, but that's like the only thing. The vocal is really, they kind of aren't enough. They're kind of iffy, in my opinion. But yeah, the track itself is solid, but it's kind of forgettable, yeah.
Alright, and now for the last one on that EP, the title track, Odyssey, with Aether, who I think is a phenomenal artist. He's made so many hits, and I think his influences is really quite noticeable here, and I think it really brings it to another level. I love the little glitchy effects that he adds and all of the switch-ups. It really makes it a whole lot more unique than I think it would have been, and I think that's a great collaboration that I'd love to see again, and I'd love to see more Aether on the label, hopefully. But, for now, we just have this.
Yeah, this is very, to me, very Inspected-esque, because you have, the first half, which has these very rough vocal chops, and a lot of the bass growls, and it remind me a lot of Directs or Proteol, a lot of that kind of stuff, which, they're the same person, so it's cool that there's stuff from different aliases meshing with each other, and then the second half goes into this really stunning, halftime, very atmospheric portion that, especially in the drum use and also the bass growls, there remind me a lot of Eccles' work. And yeah, it's just probably my favorite off of the thing, just because of how not necessarily unique, but just unique for the label. And just, yeah, it's a really cool and interesting song.
Yeah. This is my favorite on the EP. It's one of my favorite tracks on the label right now on the year. But yeah, it's brilliant. I think it really does a lot of stuff really nicely. The echo type beat on the second half of the track. The ambience is simply phenomenal. You can clearly see how Ether influences the track, and I've been a long time fan of his music, so I'm glad that we can see finally some sort of more experimental approach to a style that would be kind of repetitive, like Direct style. So I'm really glad Direct's kind of letting loose again, in this more experimental orientation. And I always thought if there was gonna be anyone that would bring Echo or Ether or Echo Map to the label, I don't know, it would be Direct, definitely, because of the whole Pro Shell thing. And yeah, but in general, the track is brilliant. I love it. It's super good, and it's definitely a standout.
Yeah, this is my favorite track on the EP as well. Just impeccable sound design, really. So many great things to deconstruct here. I love the first half even on its own, even though it's by far the weakest part of the song. It's it's really glitchy. It's very effective in what it does, and as you know, in the second half it really picks up, gets very very unique, and I like what Ether contributed to it a whole lot. I'm very glad that this exists, because I was worrying somewhat that Direct's style was going to become permanently worn out, because he's been doing this same shtick for years.
See, this shows how much I listen to other music or understand music at all. but this just sounds like standard direct to me. Not that it's bad or anything. Like, I don't like the track too much, but like it's definitely phenomenal in terms of production and like execution of the song. It just doesn't stick with me too much. But yeah.
All right,
Bruh.
I think it's about time we move on to Wednesday's release, which is
Oh yeah.
the Marcus Scholes remix of Hypnotized. And I think that this is going to probably go down as a very, very forgettable release, just something that exists, just like the Julius Drasik remix of For You. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone already forgot that that was a thing, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be up there with that as well. What it kind of reminded me of, it's like Diet Hypnotized. It reminded me of the Sabai remix of Feels Like. This is like the Sabai remix version of Hypnotized, because it's just Hypnotized, but with less in there. So yeah, I'm certainly not too big on this one.
This to the original is the Wooly remix to the original The Drop.
Yeah.
Where it's basically just the same, but like minor tweaks that just feels like it was just a live edit.
The William Black remix to the original Potions.
Pretty much. I think I somewhat despise this track, not because it's like well, it is like not a very good track. The vocals are mixed very poorly, and it does practically nothing to differentiate itself other than sort of make the melody more stuttery.
Mm-hmm.
But I have like the firm belief that if Marcus Schultz didn't make this would have never been accepted, because Marcus Schultz being on the label is at like, I would make the claim that he is probably now the biggest artist to ever be on the label. But it's just like for this very like basic like dollar store trance remix, like I don't know, it's just such a waste of potential.
Like, it's Diet Hypnotized. Like, I hate it. Not so much that it's actually like a 1 out of 10, but it doesn't really do the original justice, and that's tough to say because it's basically the original track, but
Yeah.
with like a more sturdy melody and makes worse.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
I like the original, so bruh.
Yeah, I like the
I'll agree
original
with that.
too. I like the original a lot. But this remix, why is this a thing? No one asked for it. No one needed it to be a thing. And all you did was make the original, which is good, worse. I'm going to compare this to another remix that a lot of people like to label unnecessary, which is the Darren Styles remix of The Only One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And a
so
lot of
true.
people, now, people say that remix is unnecessary, but I'm a defender of that remix because it took the original and just it only changed one thing, and that was the one thing that made me not like it, which was that it was hardstyle. But in this case, you just made it worse, and you made the vocals sound weird.
Yeah, the vocals sound off time for like most of it, and I don't even know if he changed the BPM. That was so wild.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Thursday's release, the new Crank Dat track, Tell Me, which my thoughts on it, I actually really, really enjoy it, which is kind of wonky because Crank Dat has had more than a few tracks recently, especially with that Disciple EP that I just haven't cared for in the slightest. But this is my favorite track that I've heard from him so far. It's really cool. There's a whole ton of variety, and the drops have so much impact. And even though the vocals are mixed in a way that sounds kind of really weird and off-putting, I can still get past that because I just enjoy the production so much. So yeah, this one I really do enjoy, and it was a pleasant surprise to hear.
On the contrary, I think this track, in my opinion, is just an absolute fucking mess of a song, because you have the first drop where almost all of the drums have their high end that's so like goddamn loud that just it just sounds like a complete cacophony. And then you have the second drop where there's like 7 different instruments and vocal chops and like melodies all trying to fight for space, and it's just such a absolute clusterfuck of a second drop. But saying that, this is like such a guilty pleasure. It's just like stupid fun and just goes really hard, I guess.
Like Crank That's stuff in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, this track, it's okay. I think I like the drops. The drops are fine, particularly the second drop. I really like that how he does like the arpeggios and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really cool and really unique. I didn't expect that from Crank That at all, actually. But I'm just not a fan of the off drops. I'm just not a fan of it at all. Like, I hate how the vocals are mixed, and it just feels kind of messy, and the build up kind of doesn't really lead into the drop. It feels like it's leading into like the something from his Disciple EP, and it's really off-putting. And yeah, no, I'm like, it's a mixed bag for me, definitely.
I feel the same way. It's a mixed bag. The vocals are like a limp dick. Come on, and just this feels like it's trying to be redo. It's trying to be a better version of redo, except it's a worse version of redo. I like redo. It's my favorite on-label Crank That. Of course, I like when he goes more melodic, but this, it's worse than redo and falling, because it's just kind of noisy. It's really noisy. And beyond that, the stuttery thing in the drop, where it just completely kills all the momentum that it had. And it's not like it just does that once at the beginning of the drop. It does it several times throughout, and it just completely removes any momentum that the song had. It makes it hard to enjoy for me.
I agree with that entirely. Like, word for word, it's basically just redo VIP, but worse to me as well. So,
All right. I guess I'm a bit of the odd one out on that one, but it's all right. Moving to Friday's release, the new Bad Computer track, Truth. Immediately, I noticed that this one featured much less of his signature sound design than usual, which was strange, but I still quite enjoy it regardless. I think the vocals are really solid, and the drop works well to complement them. So yeah, I think it's a pretty neat track overall.
Yeah, it's very much like a revisiting of tracks like Sanctuary and New Dawn, but with his more updated style, which is a nice touch. There, it's not really as like out there as I think it could have been, but it's a fun listen. Bad Computer's Worst is still like better than 90% of the labels, so I'm not complaining.
You can't really go wrong with Bad Computer, even in its like worst moments. And I think, kind of controversially, I think this is one of them. I'm not that huge on this, even though I loved New Dawn, and this is kind of like a revisit to that. I feel like this just could have been better. It's good, but it just could have been better, especially comparing it to like his past two releases, To You and Chasing Clouds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this just kind of is very underwhelming, and I think my opinion is kind of shaped by the fact that this just could have been better. As a track, it's not like nothing different from Bad Computer's other stuff, but no, I don't know. It's just kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, you might as well. You compare them to You and Chasing Clouds. You might as well go back even one more release with Riddle, which is my favorite Bad Computer of the year. I'm a defender of the songs that people say are Bad Computer's worst. I really like Sanctuary. I like Sanctuary a whole lot. I like New Dawn. I've always loved New Dawn. And clearly that's very similar to this. And I like Voyage. And I'm going to continue to stick up for Truth because, yeah, it's not like bombastic, blow you away, amazing, but it's laid back, and it predicates the entire song on the vocals. And the vocals are very nice. It's a nice listen. It's almost... I don't know if I want to say it's a little throttle-ish, but I enjoy hearing this style from him. especially an updated version. It's one that I definitely enjoy a lot.
I'll agree with that. Like when it first came out, I was like, or when I heard it on Call of the Wild, I was just like, this is basically just New Dawn VIP, pretty much because it was swung and in triplets. But then listening to it again, I was like, oh, this is actually completely different. And I think like I don't rate tracks like out of 10, but like if I did, this would be like an 8 or a 9. It would be really up there, and like it's only really the way the intro is, it's not triplets and it's not swung, and then it kind of kicks into it. I don't think that was executed that well. It doesn't really make sense for the...
He did the same thing in New Dawn, where
Yeah.
it was,
But I think the execution of it on this one wasn't that good. Like he does have, I think it's 4 measures, and in between 2 and 3 he has a little kick for triplets, but he doesn't really follow through with that, which like I think that's mostly done for like mixed transitions. I don't think that's really a stylistic thing that he did probably on his own. But like I don't think he executed that well. And my other main gripe with the song, which probably would keep it from being my favorite from him from this year at least, or actually it'd be my favorite from him overall, is the outro. It feels the way, so Riddle has I think 3 drops in it, and it has the first, the second, and then it has like it fade out and calls back to itself, and the outro of this feels exactly like it's doing that, and then it just turns off. It doesn't go anywhere, and I feel like this really could have used a 3rd drop in it, like, or at least the outro feels like it builds into something else and then it just cuts off. So I feel like you should have changed that slightly differently, or actually given it a 3rd drop, because it's also I think his shortest song on the label. It's only like 3:05 or something, which I think is his shortest. Yeah.
And then like this is nothing against Bad Computer, it's all against Monster Cat. But I hate when they have the catalog that's almost invisible, and I think they changed the artwork on this one, because originally when I saw the preview picture, I could barely even see the catalog box on it.
Mm-hmm. That really was a watch your back EP moment.
Yeah, that I don't even know why. Like, you can't even. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit of a mess. All right, moving on. Last Monster Cat release of the past week that we're going to cover, Saturday's release. Yet again, another Half an Orange remix. This one of one of the fan favorites, Sunscreen, which we got a very divisive, to say the least, very divisive artist, Bishu, remixing it. I know, especially with Rituals, some people loved it, some people hated it, but I know with his EP, that one was certainly unpopular. And as far as this remix goes, yeah, I really don't care for it at all. The lead is kind of grating at times, and it's starting with a song that isn't too hot to start out with anyway, so he doesn't even really make it better. It certainly is. I'm not caring for this one at all.
Yeah, I'll get to my thoughts on the original Sunscreen when we get to it later on, but it's spoilers. They're very contrarian opinions, I guess, for the server. But this track itself, I've always had the position that all of Bishu's stuff after he left the label has been way better than most of anything that he's released on the label. But now that he's back, it's just this very much sucks. Like it's probably my least. It beats the Marcus Schultz remix that I also despise as being my least favorite of the week. Like, it takes Half an Orange, which is very this very I guess the best way to describe Half an Orange is obnoxiously wholesome, where they're we're relatable, we have childhood, and then
obnoxiously wholesome, except that they're dropping the word shit in there a few times.
Yeah, but you take this, add a trap beat, and then this really trashy and screechy lead, in the drop, and it just like it feels wrong. Like it just
Yeah.
this just doesn't make sense as a remix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it really would remind me of one of those like super huge Trap Nation remixes that takes like an actual like emotional like song with some meaning to it, and it's like hey and just slaps a trap beat over it.
Yeah.
Although this isn't necessarily too emotional of a starting song, but it certainly has a different kind of like tone to it than the remix does.
I think it was a Honda, yeah.
Like it goes from being like chill and laid back to trying to be a banger, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, the vocals like don't even work for like a hard like I'm gonna call it uncaged, whether it is or not. They just don't work for an uncaged song, and the build up just feels so out of place, and the lyrics like again, Half an Orange is supposed to be like uplifting for the most part, and it just feels like you're just trying to just ruin someone's birthday party with giving it that build up. And it's just like, I just want to be happy and sad and feel good. And you're just trying to make me depressed. And then the drop just doesn't help it anymore at all. And yeah, I am someone who likes the original. I don't dislike it. This just, nope, is all I can say.
All right.
Sunscreen is one of my least favorite tracks on the label, so that's that. And my man actually managed to make a track worse than the original. Like I'm actually surprised. Like how do you even manage to do that? Like
He gets an award for that.
he will. Like he truly went for the lowest common denominator with this track. It's so bad. Like I'm not even gonna hold back on this one. It's just awful. It hurts. It really hurts.
With the vocals, I don't even know how it could have been made better though, or like with the lyrics, like they work with the original, but I don't know how you could have changed that to make them work.
Yeah, it would have always been held back by the original regardless, but I'm sure if you had one of like Volant, who we talked about last week, I'm sure if you had that kind of production on this, at least the outcome would have been quite a bit like significantly better than what we got with Bishu on the remix, for sure.
Yeah, like
As soon as I saw Sunscreen Bishu remix, I was like, oh no, oh god.
Yeah. Oh, I was expecting the worst release of the year, and while I will say that it is not my least favorite track of the year, I am gonna say, you ever listen to a song and then while you're listening to it, you instantly know that it is going to be in your top 10 worst songs of the year. That is exactly what happened here, and oh my god! I mean, as if it wasn't bad enough to be remixing Sunscreen, which is one of the lowest lows Half an Orange has ever had. You have this really screechy, just awful drop, and that buildup is, oh my god! I cannot defend it in any way. There's just nothing good about it. There's zero good things about it.
Damn, I think we like this track.
Yeah, I think this is going to be coming down as a catalog favorite.
I have
Yeah.
this is
BO
this is
2020.
I just had a revelation on why I like hate this track so much. This is like a story. So basically at my school, the main thing that I do is technical theater. I do a lot of like sound effect work and like Foley work for a lot of the productions that we do. And last year we did a production of the musical Crazy for You, and we for that we needed intermission music. So I was like, okay, let's just bring like some jazz stuff. Except one of the actors goes, wait, I got an idea. And then he pulls out like a fucking USB, and it has it's like the original show tunes from these songs from this musical, which are like very happy and upbeat, but they're put on like this fucking FL Studio like basic ass trap beats. and it made me, like, with drums out of key, and it just made me, like, so viscerally angry that something, like, so out of place could have been, like, imagined. And that's what this song is to Sunscreen. It's just so, like, it's just such, like, it just shouldn't be together. Like, no.
Like,
Track makes me violent.
Yeah.
at least with the Marcus Scholes remix, it was a worse version of the original. But this doesn't even, like, I know that one doesn't do justice to the original, but at least it doesn't try and, like, contradict what the original was going for. This just does exactly that.
This is very much like the equivalent to Sunscreen as like the Brondo remixes to Potions.
Exactly. Yeah.
So hilariously out of place.
Yeah. So I guess I must have to give it that. This remix, despite being not very good, it's at least entertaining. It's kind of funny. It's kind of a ha-ha track. So I'll at least give it that.
I can't give it that.
It's not even entertainingly bad like some songs that I've heard this year.
Yeah, I will agree with that comment there. It's just bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't know what it's trying to be anyway, so...
All right.
I think we should move on.
Yeah, we spent like the last 15 minutes bashing on this remix, which I think is more than enough. So now let's move on to...
deserves it.
We don't want to get called out by Muzz.
Bruh. All right.
You don't have to justify, calling this remix a piece of garbage because people who listen to it can do that on their own.
All right. Now, moving on to some releases of other labels. First one, we have yet to cover this label, so pretty neat first time. Mousetrap. Only 2 releases, but pretty neat. What is going on?
Sorry.
I think someone's using a vibrator.
That was my vibrator.
This is going to be such a cursed episode. Okay.
It'll be great.
All right.
Oh, I thought it was turned off. Fuck.
It wasn't a silent one, guys.
No, that was mine.
It was on the highest setting. All right. Okay. So
no, that was actually his hand banging on the table from it.
Oh my god.
All right. First track, New Eddie with Colleen. I want to say it's D'Agostino. I'm not really too good with those kind of last names, I won't lie. But the track is somewhere in between. If you know me, you know I love Eddie. I think he's one of the greatest artists on the label right now. And he just releases hit after hit. And even though this isn't one of his best ones, I think it's really solid. The vocals are quite good, and I think the production really matches. So I quite enjoy this one.
Yeah. Eddie, same like for you. Eddie, for me, is probably like top 3 artists on the label behind like Atlas and Deadmau5 himself. So I was very excited for this. And while I do think it's very sort of safe for his standards, there's still like the very rough bass in it and the very vaporwavy sort of synth like arpeggios that appear halfway through are really nice. I think despite it being really safe, it's still like a really interesting track. And then Colleen D'Agostino is like the progressive house vocalist, and like she's just amazing on so many tracks, including this one.
See ya. Yeah.
I'm usually not amazed by Mousetrap and its Discog. I'm usually not a fan of the style they put out, but Eddie is a very big exception. He's definitely good. He's up there as one of the best artists on the label. And yeah, I'm not gonna come back to it a whole lot, but this is just a great listen. It's fun, it's nice, the vocals look great, and yeah.
Yeah, I really, really enjoy it. I think it gives me great classic electro vibes. Like, it really does a great job at channeling the past, despite being a brand new release, really fresh. I think Colleen, despite being a standard prog house vocalist who has appeared on everything on Mousetrap, really, I think she really works in the song's favor. And yeah, it's just a very nice listen. Yeah, it's safe, but it's very nice.
And then moving on to the Other Mousetrap release of the past week, the new No Mana No Mana track, The Same Way featuring Voetians. I hope that's at least close. I could be way off with that name, but I think solid vocals in this one. The production, similar to the last one, I think it works. It's not quite as interesting, but I think it's a pretty solid track overall, and I think this week was one of the better ones for Mousetrap.
Yeah, I'm very conflicted on this one because the instrumental itself, I think, is like miles above anything on his last album, which I'm assuming that this track is on like a companion EP. But like, and like everything about it has like such a really nice sense of progression and all of like it's just a perfect sum. It's a perfect sum of like all of Nomana's various styles, but I'm really not a fan of the vocals done by Voetians. I think that's how you pronounce it. They just don't mesh well with Nomana's music, and it just feels very out of place.
I agree with that. But then again, I'm usually not a huge fan of No Mana and stuff. I think the production in this is nice, but the vocals just clash and don't work at all. And by themselves, they're actually not that great, so they kind of drag the track down. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree with Kovak. Like she said, the vocals are dragging it down. They're doing a disservice to the rest of the track. And you know, I was never really big on Voetians anyway. I didn't really feel his vocals in Spectrum. And a lot of other things that he's done, I'm not really big into it. And I think that's the same here. He's doing the track a disservice. He's, it clashes stylistically with the rest of what's going on. But despite that, I instantly added it to my playlist because I think the production is very, very clean. And I love the progression. The progression is unmatched. It's fantastic. And I really, really appreciate the chord work in this track. And overall, I mean, despite the vocals dragging it down, nothing can stop me from loving it.
Then the other label, whose past week's releases we're covering once again, Never Say Die. They released 2 items here, an EP and a single. First up, the EP, More Kismet's newest EP, Revenge of the Unicorns. My thoughts on it, I thought it was pretty alright. It's at least better than the majority of the releases that Never Say Die puts out. And there were some cool ideas here, but I didn't care for a lot of them. The one exception being Flare. I really, really enjoy Flare. But the rest of them had some cool ideas, but I don't think I'd be coming back to them.
Yeah, I think I'm very sort of conflicted in general with a lot of Moore's music because they have such like a attention to detail and such a like stunning sound design in dubstep that's like it's unlike anything else in the scene, but their songwriting in comparison is typically like very lacking, like especially here the second half of the Snowcloak collab they changed, as well as the Leo Jerks collab. Both sound very monotonous and sort of they don't really go anywhere. But on the plus side, you have tracks like as you mentioned, Flare, which is a really amazing sort of future bassy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Convulsion Therapy is really good. The Voltra collab Duplex is very much what I would imagine AT-Aliens would sound like if they were good. But like it's just, I think like this isn't at all like an absolute standout EP of the year for me, but I'm still definitely keeping my eye on More Kismet because I think they have an extremely bright future ahead of them.
Yeah, a lot of potential here for sure.
I agree with like everything said. Even though I have a more negative stance on the EP, I wasn't really that big of a fan. I think the songwriting and the monotony of like most of the EP kind of brings it down. There's not a lot to hold on to, and in general, though in general, I gotta say their sound design is excellent, and there's definitely a lot of potential. Like I'm gonna keep an eye on More Kismet, but not that closely because I'm just not interested in the songwriting at all.
Mhm.
But if it ever progresses into something great, then yeah, they're probably gonna become one of the greatest names.
As far as the EP goes, I no, it's definitely way out of my comfort zone, way out of my range of taste. I'm not usually into this stuff or the stuff that NSD puts out at any time, really. But I can see a lot of, like you said, Katz, potential. I see potential. Um, uh, there's a lot that can be done with this sound design, and I love their attention to detail. Now, they are making an EP that does kind of assault my ears a little. I'm not into this style, but I really appreciate the intricate sound design. I think, like you said, Flair, fantastic track, with featuring an appearance from More Kismet's mother, which that's wholesome.
Yeah.
And another standout track for me, which I don't think anyone would probably agree with, but I'm going to say it anyway, is They Changed. I really like that because they played it a lot more reserved, a lot, they pulled it back a lot for that song, and it really does wonders for me, just because I can appreciate the sound design, but then I'm also not really being assaulted sonically.
All right. And then the other NSD release was the new Lux track. I hope it's pronounced not like LUX or something wacky. Misery. I didn't care for it at all. It was pretty basic. It didn't really do anything for me, to be honest. That was kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, this is a rhythm song. That's it. Like it's very much just like it's rhythm. There's nothing to say about this song. Like there's nothing. It's
Rhythm.
so like it's so like incredibly safe and generic for dubstep standards. It's just like it doesn't have really a reason to exist.
I
Rhythm.
hate the off drops. I hate the drops. I do not like this at all. I'm not the biggest fan of rhythm in general, and this just kind of hits the nail in the coffin. And yeah, no, this is just not good at all.
Take a shot every time we say rhythm.
Rhythm.
I'm already wasted. Let's see. Yeah, my basic thoughts on this song is that this song is like cum. I want it anywhere but in my ears.
Oh my god.
The reaction was better than
Can you say
the reaction was better than the joke, I have to say. This is an episode. I will tell you that.
It's a fun one. If it isn't like a shit show to watch, it'll at least it's been fun to make this one.
Yeah, at least.
Whatever.
All right. Now moving on to we have a long list here, but we'll get through it. Some other off-label tracks from the past week we wanted to cover. First one, new Onamaguchi track, Vancouver. My favorite part of their music is the drums. I love the drums. The drummers just going ham all the time, brings a lot of energy into it, and I think they did a good job here as well. And yeah, overall, not necessarily their best release, but I think it's up to par with their recent stuff, and it's a cool track overall in my opinion.
Yeah, this is very like run of the mill for Onamaguchi standards, but saying that is still really good. It has such like a very fun and upbeat and uplifting feel to it, and the mixing of chiptune elements with like much more aggressive rock leading stuff is done really well. And yeah, it's nothing that they haven't done before, but it's still a very fun track.
I'm a huge fan of this. The mixing of the chiptune elements and the rock elements and the intensity, the upbeat, and it kind of feels like an anime opening to me, like something along those lines. And I'm fucking weeb, so yeah. Yeah, I really like this in general. Like it's such a solid listen. It's so fun, so upbeat. I've been banging it out.
Yeah, I really enjoy this. it's just so uplifting, and it gets me moving. And I mean, I've never been to Vancouver, but if it's like that, I'm willing to go.
Let's
to
book
try
our
it.
flight today.
But I had a similar thought to you, Katz, which is when I immediately when I heard it, I was like, this sounds like a chiptune version of an anime theme song. That's what it sounds like to me, and
Yeah.
it really works. All of the elements come together.
You could have used Japanese vocals, and that would have been actual nut for me, at least.
All right. Moving on to the next track on this list, the new Former Hero track on Bitbird, Friends Now. Former Hero is certainly a fan favorite around these parts, and I think this certainly holds up to that. I really do enjoy it, and yeah, I think it's all around a great track and a solid release.
Yeah, this is very much the while I don't think it's Former Hero's best, this will be like the track that I show to people to try to get them into this artist, because this has like everything that makes him great. I think his vocal performance is probably the best out of all of his songs, and it has an infectious drop that's just as great as everything else that he does, and the ambient leaning section at the end is stunning. And yeah, I just love this track, and I think it's absolutely amazing that Former Hero is finally on Bitbird after being part of the community for so long.
This track is Former Hero. Like, it's amazing. Like, I'm gonna say something pretty controversial, but I think it took me a while to understand the hype behind Former Hero. Like, for some reason, I just couldn't get into his music at all. But then I listened to Redwood, and everything changed. Like, everything changed. And now I really like his style. While I think the drop could be a bit better, I'm still a huge fan of the track. And that last bit of the track is, like, oh my god, it's so good. Like, I couldn't even begin to tell you. Like, that piano section where it feels so natural. Like, I don't know. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, Former Hero, you've done it again. Oh yeah, you know what? I'm way more into Bitbird on the whole than I am into Monster Cat, even though I follow Monster Cat way more dedicatedly. But in any case, Former Hero, wow, just Former Hero. It's always been a favorite of mine, but this just feels great. I love the tempo. It's kind of a bonkers, crazy tempo.
Yeah.
And it works so well in the song's favor, and the vocals are great. And that outro is fantastic, where it slows down, goes free time. Yeah, it's fantastic.
All right, moving on to the next one on the list. Yet another fan favorite artist from the release from them in the past week, Escape by Jaren. Yeah, this one I think has a lot more energy, and it's quite a bit more, not necessarily uplifting, but still like energetic than most of the stuff on his EP, but I think it's just as good. I think his vocals are great here. He reminds me a little bit of Eden, which is one of my favorite vocalists out there, and the production is just great as always, so I really, really enjoy this one.
Yeah, this is probably like a really, really whack take, but I'm usually not a big fan of Jaren. I think his especially a lot of his early work is very derivative of like Porter Robinson-esque mel dub and future bass scene. But
Sasha moment, Jaren's a Porter Robinson copy.
I wouldn't go as far as Sasha Vibes said that Jaren's a Porter copy, but he definitely is his sound design is extremely derived, or was extremely derived from that stuff. However, I think when he reaches out into more rock leaning territory on tracks like Catch, on the second half of Absence of Association, and now with this one, I think is where his very bombastic and blown out production really, really works. It gives me a lot of M83 vibes at places. And yeah, it's just like this is probably. I'm very happy that Jaren's moving in like his own unique direction, and I'm excited to see what he does next because I'm actually enjoying it for once.
Yeah. Holy shit! Like what? Like, I mean, Jaren's one of my favorite producers. Absence of Association is my second favorite song of all time. Would be favorite if Surface didn't have like a deep emotional connection. But like, how does he do it? Like, it's so, I don't know. It hits me in places. It's so good. Like the rock mix. It feels so energetic. It feels just upbeat. It feels like Jaren's releasing so much emotion in the track. It's unparalleled to anything else I've listened to this year. And yeah, it's definitely my favorite song of the year so far. I was absolutely blown away by this. Like it's crazy. Like I'm so glad Jaren's back, and I'm so glad he found like a soft spot because his more rock oriented style is just insane. And I'm glad he's finding his own way, and it's just so good. Like I'm so hyped about what's coming for Jaren because holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow, Katz, I'm almost afraid to say what I was about to say, which is that I'm probably going to bring this down a little bit.
Dang.
I'm not as into Jaren as most of the people in this server. You know, his style is okay. It does feel a little bit kind of like a Porter copy, but I don't know. I think his vocals in this track are real good. I think production-wise, it's just not a style that I particularly think is great. I think it's okay. I'm not into it. It's not something that hits home with me. I don't have any emotional connection to it. And, I'm not going to form one based off of this style.
All right. Moving on to the next one on this list. New Madion, we have got some of like the craziest producers just always like they all released something in this past week. So we got Madion in here too. New track, Prince. I thought it was super cool, very similar to the style on his recent album, but I quite like that style, and I think he continues it here, and I think he's really starting to craft his own sound very well. And yeah, this one has a lot of cool moments, and I think I'll be coming back to it in the future.
Yeah, if you had told me like a few months ago that Madion was going to make like a retro industrial synth wavy song, I would have been like, oh no, like I would have like expected it to be terrible. But in like now that it's done, I think this track has like it still maintains a lot of Madion's unique flair and production style. That it still is like an amazing track, and it very much reminds me of what like this to his like Good Faith era is very much like what Imperium was to Adventure, like sort of this delve, or it's just him delving into a lot more of like an aggressive sound design and like a darker tone.
Well, from what I know, this was like a cut track from the album, I think. Like it was supposed to be on the album, but he cut it.
Well, yeah,
it wasn't supposed to release.
Yeah, it's a cut track that he's played at a ton of live sets since.
I think it's an excellent track. I really like the darker turn to the Good Faith type style. I was a really big fan of Good Faith as a whole. I think No Fear No More was one of my favorite tracks of last year, and yeah, this kind of progresses that style really nicely. I love like the drums intro that it has, and I think it's like super. It feels very aggressive, which I appreciate a lot, and I wouldn't really expect from Madion, which is cool.
This was an instant playlist ad. It's just so good all around. You can sense the style, the sort of stylistic direction that he took on Good Faith. You can sense a continuation of that. You can sense even in the lighter parts of the songs, you can even hear like a kind of like Miracle-esque kind of thing going on. But when it gets down to business, oh God, I love that drop. It really, really hits. And it just hearing him go a little bit more aggressive, a little bit out there, it has paid off. I think hearing this style, it just makes me want to force him to make more music so I can hear more. I want more, and I want it now. I guess I can't get my way because I'm gonna have to wait.
Moving on, next one on the list, we've got a whole ton on here, but now we've got an entire new album from Pierce Fulton called Keeping the Little Things. My thoughts on it, I thought it had some nice ideas in there, but I don't think Pierce capitalized on a whole lot of them, and they didn't really tend to go anywhere. There were some neat tracks, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of it certainly dragged for me, so I don't think I'd be coming back to too many on here.
Yeah, like I mentioned this before, but this is probably the most aggressively 5 out of 10 album that I've listened to so far this year. And I think a lot of it is just very like on par for something that you'd hear on labels such as like Armada or Ajuna Deep or Compact or like labels like these, and it doesn't really have a lot of what like made Pierce Fulton an interesting artist in his first few EPs and as well as Better Places, his debut album. I think pretty much the only tracks that I enjoyed are tracks like Free Fall and Zychic, which do have like these that are recognizable as like Pierce's music, I suppose. Like it's just it's very disappointing in my opinion.
It's all around it's a solid listen, but it's nothing too groundbreaking. It's nothing to like, oh, I'm gonna come back to this immediately, instant playlist ad. It's an okay listen. I enjoyed when I listened to it. Probably because I was laying outside and the sun was setting, so it was kind of bog. But in general, I think my favorite track is Free Fall, and that's the only playlist ad from the album, because I think it's just different from the rest of the album. It kind of feels super nice, super clean. And it kind of sucks that was the first track, because then the rest of the album felt like really underwhelming in comparison, because I really liked that, but then the rest of the album was just nice and okay, I guess.
Yeah, I've always kind of looked at Pierce Fulton as the dollar store version of Eden, and I mean, even though that's definitely not something that that's not a comparison that I can really make for this album in particular, because it's not vocal centric. It's just boring throughout. Like I like over half of the songs in it, I can't tell you what they sound like. And I know that's only after a single listen in preparation for this, but I feel like I should have at least some idea of what I'm getting into. But with this album, I don't have that clear-cut sense of what it's trying to be. It's just very, very one note. But despite that, I do like a few tracks on here. Even though I am not like you of the opinion that Free Fall is that great. It's kind of boring to me, actually. But then you've got stuff like Friday Island, which was actually very unexpectedly funky. and I appreciated that. And then stuff like Esplanade, I like Esplanade, and yeah, In the Morning I think was nice. I'm gonna be honest, I can't really remember because it was kind of a forgettable album. But I do remember that there were bright spots on it.
Some of the songs like they all have their own interesting theme to them or like interesting style, but there's nothing much done with them. This whole album as a whole feels like it's something Pierce could have done as like a side project. Like,
Yeah.
I know that he wants to like he wants to have like I think he has one alternative project, maybe two. I know he has one with I think his brother. And like overall, like the only tracks that really stuck out to me were like Free Fall, Zakik. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
It's a wacky title. I'll give you.
Yeah,
that.
and it's also I think capitalized weird or something. I don't know. And Esplanade, but like I said earlier, like I feel like it should have been something that he could have put onto a side project and released. I think it was last year he had his 6-track EP, which was instrumental. But I think like compared to his other songs, Better Places album and the Borrowed Lives EP, I think he really excels in that like pop category, like electropop with vocals. I think that EP and album really excelled, and really, I think that works well with the style. Whereas this, it's not bad, but I feel like it doesn't fit under the Pierce Fulton name.
Yeah,
like it's all good for a producer to do what he wants, or she or they what they want. But I feel like it should have been under a different name. And I think when he started this, maybe not when he started it, but he wanted to have it as like a vocal album, but he decided not to. But it would have been interesting to see like vocals on some of these songs because there's only a few vocal chops throughout. Which like after he decided that he didn't want to do vocals, he was like, okay, it's just going to be instrumental. But I feel like instrumental albums don't. You need a little more something interesting than just all like electro housey type music. So
yeah.
Go on some of that frequent type shit to make it work.
Yeah. All right. Last one on this list, final stretch. Porter Robinson dropped a kind of a track with an interesting title, to say the least. Shepherdess dash She Heals Everything 2016. Kind of wacky title, but I won't judge. I thought it was neat to hear this style, because this is not something like this kind of style is something that I don't think he's really touched since before he did the whole virtual self thing, because now his new style is very different. So it was cool to hear this. It was reminiscent to some of the stuff on Worlds. It's not as great or as iconic as that in my opinion, but I think it's still an overall pretty nice track.
Yeah, like to put into scale, I think my biggest thing with this track is that I can't really judge it properly because I'm just somewhat in awe that She Heals Everything is actually out. Because to just put in comparison to that, like last podcast where I gushed like for 5 minutes straight about that Hudson Mohawk track.
Yeah.
Like how I said like, oh, it was like my favorite ID. Imagine that, but for like half the EDM community, and you have She Heals Everything. Like this is just such a monumental live track and like one of Porter Robinson's most well-loved tracks ever. And while listening to it, I think it does so much better as like a live ID, as like a live mix. I think there's certain like choices that feel very rough without like audience backing behind it. And yeah, it's just like I'm not completely like in love with it, but like I think you really have to like see this track, listen to this track live to really get the full experience of it.
Yeah, I like this. It's nothing too mind blowing, but yeah, I'm still waiting on that album, Porter.
Yeah, this track very good. I like the kind of darker turns in the second half. But then, there are also some strange choices like that fake build-up. I like. I think overall, despite some minor issues, I am still pretty impressed with the track. I think it does a lot of things right. And overall, I think it's good at evoking emotion, and I can imagine it being very good played live. Of course, it's not like I'm going anywhere
For a
to
long
see
time.
anyone perform, because no one's stupid enough, unless you're a Chainsmokers fan. To do that kind
True.
of thing.
Anything else you guys want to say before we finish up?
S'il vous plaît.
Oh
Right.
God.
What? Okay, eat the rich. Bye.
Okay.
Death to America.
Thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode of Castalog. See ya.